You have to suck at unpacking your emotions. That's a part of the human experience. And as you continue to unpack your emotions and try and try and try again, I like to use the term awkward application. So if I'm talking to someone and I need to unpack my mental health, I say, hey, awkward application here. And then I potentially butcher it.
The month of May holds a very special place in my heart. It's the month recognized as the Mental Health Awareness Month, mostly in North America, but it's spreading across the world. So for the month of May, we are honored to partner with Mission Save a Life, a new force in the fight against mental health stigma and suicide. Through education and advocacy, they're sparking conversations that lead to positive change. Are you ready to join the conversation? Take the first step by visiting missionsavealife.org. Join our community, share your voice, and let's amplify the message of mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Together, we can be the change. And yes, you are not alone, and we're all here to support. No judgment, just love. Welcome to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey to the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. I am your host, Constantine Moron, and today we're exploring a story of resilience, recovery, and rejuvenation with Chase Warburton. Chase is not just a survivor of a grueling 18-year battle with addiction. He's a victorious advocate for sobriety, mental health, and holistic healing. With 5 years of sobriety fueling his journey, Chase has turned profound personal loss and struggle into a powerhouse of advocacy and entrepreneurial success. Today, we'll uncover the transformative power of red light therapy and discuss how it supports healing from concussions and enhances mental well-being. We'll also dive into the importance of sharing personal struggles and the strength found in support networks, particularly tailored for men facing similar battles. Chase's journey from the depths of addiction to becoming a beacon of hope offers more than just inspiration. It provides practical insights into overcoming life's toughest challenges through resilience and innovative healing approaches. So, ready your hearts and minds for a deeply moving conversation that's bound to enlighten and inspire. But before we start, I have a small favor to ask. Please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these transformative stories to light. Now, let's begin. Welcome, beautiful souls. I have with me Chase. Chase, welcome to the show. I had the pleasure of being on your show not long ago. It was such a blast. So I'm so happy to have you on the other side of the microphone right now.
Hey, Constantine, thank you so much for welcoming me to your show, having me on your show, and also for coming onto my show previously. I'm really, really excited for our conversation today.
Yes, brother. So as you and I discussed, right, and we know this, most of the people in the audience will know it as well. We are in May, which holds a dear place in my heart. I mean, I was born in the month of May, so that's one reason. But at the same time, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know you and I connected over that and your mission and what you do with your show and what you built is all about mental health awareness and suicide prevention. So I'd love to jump to a part of your story where you can perhaps give us a bit of inspiration and empowerment for those that still perhaps struggle with something dark in their life, or, like in my case, may have and know people in our lives that are not in a good place.
Yeah, I love that you just get right into the good stuff. That's awesome. So, yeah, for those that are in a dark space right now and looking for advice, first I want you to say to yourself that I am okay. Right? If the whole world revolves around, or your world, better said that way, your world revolves around statements such as I am, right? I am unworthy, I am miserable, I am depressed, right? And then you start to believe those things over time, and then what you do is you start to look for confirmations of those things. And I want you to know that that's okay. That's okay that you do that. The fun fact is you're actually really normal. Everybody does that. Constantine and I have done that in the past. We still probably do that in some ways that we're not aware of yet, right? Because we're humans and we're growing, and that's totally okay. So just understand that you're okay as you are. And I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to say something powerful about yourself, whether you fully believe it or not. Just say, I am blank, right? For me, it's I am a servant, I am a lover, I am, worthy. And as you start to believe these I am statements, right, as you get rid of the old I ams, the ones that no longer are serving you or benefiting you, and you say the I am that's really powerful, your life is instantly going to change. And it doesn't take years, it doesn't take weeks or months or days. It can be right now. You just have to believe that the old I am is no longer serving you, and the I am you have today, the new I am, is true.
I love the Chase so much. Well, thank you for jumping as well with me right into it. And I'm passionate about psychology, right? And I study a lot of research these days. I talk to a lot of therapists and psychotherapists, and you name it. And what you just said about what we tell ourselves is so powerful that many of us don't realize. In fact, I didn't realize it for most of my life, which is that whatever you tell yourself, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, is what you will create in your life. Because you mentioned this, right? You start looking for proof of something. So if someone tells you you're not good enough, or if someone tells you you're ugly or fat or stupid or whatever, and you take that in and accept it, even if it's not true, which in most cases it's not, you will find proof for it because your brain will start looking for it because you put your focus on it. So,
Exactly.
right? So, to what Chase said here, I absolutely love that because that's one way you can take power back. You start to challenge the stories of your life and see what's true and what's not. Because it
Mhm.
doesn't matter to your brain. If you tell a story, it will become true. Now
Yeah.
you choose which story you want to become true.
It's so funny, and this is actually something that I just realized like a day or two ago. So for those listening, just understand that I'm still a work in progress, right? Just to give like a real world example here. So the last few months, I've been dealing with some pretty bad anxiety, right, towards my wife, thinking that my wife was going to cheat on me or thinking that my wife was going to leave me.
Mm.
And I could never understand why I had this anxiety, right? I just kept having it, and it always came back to this anxiety. And I've been thinking about it and working on it and trying so hard to discover why the anxiety was here and how to combat it. Now, I'm not one for prescription medication, but I was getting to the point where I was like, maybe this is the only option, right? Like all of the tools and all of the recovery work and everything I was doing in my day to day basis, right? My cold plunges, my working out, my meditations, my journaling, my healthy eating, my affirmations, everything. I still wasn't getting the anxiety. I still was having this anxiety, and it was really, really making me upset, right? Here am I, this person who's trying to help others, and I have anxiety and I can't get rid of it,
Mm.
right? So I got with a coach, and this coach said, well, what's the anxiety about, right? And I said, well, it's about my wife cheating on me. I really don't want it to happen. And he says, well, and then he kept digging and asked me, he's like, well, why are you having the anxiety? What does this mean to you? How does this turn out? And he asked me all these questions. And it got to this point where I finally threw my hands in the air and started crying. And I said, it's because I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of her love, and I just don't deserve it. I'm not enough, is what it got down to. And the minute he said we found that out, we did a routine to pull it out of me, right? He says, well, you are enough. So are you done with this? Because you're not enough and you're having anxiety about your wife cheating on you. So therefore you're actually doing exactly what you want. You don't want to be enough. So you're looking for a confirmation that you're not. And that's what this anxiety is doing. So he brought me through this process, got me raw and vulnerable, made me cry, made me scream like a lion that I was done, with, say it with your chest kind of stuff. And I said I was done. I was done with the anxiety. It was no longer serving me, and it was no longer a part of who I was. And then he had me think about who I truly am. And that's where I'm a servant and I'm a lover came. And once I fully embraced that and grounded myself and anchored that to who I was, dude, these last 2 or 3 days have been awesome. Like I get home and my kitchen's a mess and I'm like, I don't want to cook anything. But oh my gosh, you know what? Who cares if my kitchen's messy? I'm going to go make a meal that I'm worthy of, right? So I made some really nice spaghetti for my whole family last night. Chicken nuggets for my son because he's picky, but still, like I made, I made good food for us. And this morning, my wife woke up sick, and instead of just rolling my eyes and being like, she's sick again, it was like, oh no, she got tea, she got a humidifier. I got my kids to rub her feet. Like she got breakfast in bed just because I felt so much more love for her because I no longer associate with the I am not enough. Right. So, guys, like, just take it from there. Right. Like, there's a living situation where I thought I wasn't enough. And look how I formulated it. My life was miserable. I didn't like my wife at the time. For a while, I had so much anxiety about stuff that was never going to happen. And all I had to do was change my I am. My life shifted drastically.
Wow, Chase, thank you for telling that powerful, powerful story. And I want to break this down a bit with you because this is the type of work I do with some of my clients as well, is diving into these stories that we tell ourselves. Now, what's powerful about what you shared, which, I mean, all of it is powerful, let's be honest, and it's everyone's story is powerful, but you didn't know why something was happening in your life. And you got to the point where, like, well, I put my hands up, there's nothing else I can think of other than maybe medication. And luckily, you were able to find this person to guide you down the path. And what did it come down to? Awareness of what the challenge is. And because we are afraid to dive deep into the root cause of something, then we shy away from ever asking the right questions. And sometimes, like you said, you need to find another person to help you with that, be it a therapist, be it a coach, be it even someone in your life that you can go to and say, hey, can you help me figure this out? And once you get down to the root of it, which you've done, it's like an illusion. It disappears. Yes, you pumped your chest, you did all those things, but once you got to the bottom of it and you realize that the statement is I'm not enough, you can find proof to the opposite, which means that that illusion now dissolves and it's gone. And if you can come from a place of love and understanding as to why that's happening and not putting more fear and hate on it, then it will just disappear, like it did in your case. And now
Yeah.
you're having all the beautiful benefits of it. Now, of course, other things will start to show up in your life, right? Because you probably have seen this, and you've been on a 18-year long battle with addiction, and you've come on top of it, right? But and I've had my own battles with that. What happens is like a layer of the onion, right? You keep unpacking it. You do one, you're like, oh yeah, you get some confidence, right? Then the next
Right.
thing happens, and then what we tend to do, and I'm curious to see your take, we tend to forget how we fixed the previous problem. And then we know that the tool is to actually get curious and go in and get deeper and ask questions. And then we stay miserable for a bit longer until we build the courage or someone comes along to help us to go deep again.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes, I think humans, especially in this day and age, have a really hard time embracing truth, right? We are taught in growing up that our emotions aren't important, right? That we just need to suck it up and deal with it.
Yes.
We're also taught at the same time that, like, why should you get shamed, essentially? Why should you be feeling bad, right? Why should you have all these things? You're doing so good. And it gets to this point where you forget how to have hardness, right? And we also need to look at the people pleasing epidemic that's out there in the world, right? Where everyone needs to be okay with everyone, and you can't say anything that offends anybody anymore. And you can't have your own opinion. You got to go with the crowd and all these things. And it gets to this point where you can't handle hard things anymore, right? People want life so easy. People want life so fluid that they don't have to go through hard things and struggles. So when you ask those questions and you get that self-awareness, which I'm a huge advocate of, I don't think you can do anything unless you have self-awareness, right? Unless you're willing to actually do the hard thing and have the self-awareness and be willing to ask those questions, it's really important. And I also think it's really important to have someone to help you as well, like a therapist or a mental health coach or something along those lines, because denial is really powerful, right? Denial can go from choosing not to have a conversation because you don't agree with it. It can go so far as that you totally forget that questions are even possible, right? That you can forget to have thoughts because your denial goes so far.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, especially in my own personal experience, is that I just don't know. I've so far forgotten, I'm so far deep into some denial in parts of my life that it takes someone else to pull it out of me. And I'm actually quite a stubborn human being as well. It took my coach like 45 minutes before I finally admitted I wasn't enough. Like, it was just these circles that I kept putting myself through, right?
But
So I
Chase,
think,
Chase, let's stop there for a second. That's actually really important. You said it took 45 minutes to get it out of you versus how many months of you struggling with anxiety.
It's a great couple months, actually, about three.
right? 45 minutes versus 3 months. And yes, those 45 minutes, you said they weren't pleasant, right?
No,
You
they
got
were
it.
so painful. They were
How painful
so
were those
uncomfortable.
2 months? And then what would follow if you don't tackle it, right? And that's where people get caught. That's why I wanted to stop you there, because I feel like the point you're making there, and anyone listening is I've gone through it, you've gone through it how many times. It's kind of that fallacy that, well, I don't want to face the pain, I don't want to face the music, so I'm going to sit in my misery. But then add it up, like see the compounding effect. Because had you gotten down the path of not being enough to yourself, then you would have caused the situations where likely your wife would have detached from you, and then would have ended up doing the things you didn't want her to do, because you became the person you wouldn't want to be, and she wouldn't want you to be either, right?
I
Because your stories will take you there.
I would have created the man that I thought I was, whether I wanted it or not, because of the belief I had. You're absolutely right there.
Yeah, right. So, hey, it's Konstantin here, and I want to take a brief moment to truly thank you for being a part of this incredible journey of transformation. You are the reason we are creating this content. I see you and I appreciate you. Your support truly means the world to me. I want to ask you for a small favor. I'd love for you to join our mission by hitting like, subscribe, or leaving a thoughtful comment or review. Your engagement helps others discover these insights, and together we can continue to unlock the power of authenticity and personal transformation. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Now, back to the episode. That's why, so it's like 45 minutes of, let's say some uncomfortable stuff, which, is 45 minutes versus months and months and months, or lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
Then you pick your battle, right? That's what I always see as myself, because I look back after I went through my journey and I'm like, man, I went 10 years through this and I fixed it in hours. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's funny as I think back to it, it doesn't seem any worse like now, right? Looking at it in 2020 hindsight with the 45 minutes of pain, it honestly was no worse than a hard workout.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you go to the gym and you push yourself and your body is burning for an hour, cool. If you can do that, you can have a deep dive into your mental health. The pain is no different in hindsight.
Well, there's a couple of things that come up there, Chase. One is that, like a workout, I play a lot of soccer and used to play competitively before. Right, it's something I learned to do since I grew up. But you
Mhm.
mentioned something important, which is the same for me growing up in Eastern Europe. You don't learn growing up how to actually handle your emotions, your feelings. You don't get to learn how to actually handle your thoughts and your beliefs and to challenge them. So yeah, it's going to be difficult because it's something new. So if you don't know how to do it, it will be more challenging, right? And if you don't have the right environment with you, the right mentors for that, you may have tried to do it and then you got put down. You may have tried to do it and nobody listened, or they laughed at you, which is even worse. And now this cycle gets created where you can't actually feel safe and comfortable to unpack, which builds what, right? Builds a scenario in which you push down your emotions and feelings, and then they'll erupt like a volcano eventually.
Yeah, you develop the I am not enough statement from all of that. And, as you were talking, there's a quote from a movie that I love, and it's sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something.
Yeah,
So you have to suck at unpacking your emotions. That's a part of the human experience. And as you continue to unpack your emotions and try and try and try again, I like to use the term awkward application. So if I'm talking to someone and I need to unpack my mental health, I say, hey, awkward application here. And then I potentially butcher it. And that's okay, because as every time I do it, I get to reflect on it, become self-aware of where I fell short, and change and grow.
exactly. That's beautiful, Chase. That's amazing. So now that we talked about that really powerful story, I'm curious to see a bit more about your journey. You said you've battled addictions for about 18 years, right?
Right.
When did you first realize that what you were doing was not necessarily good for your future self, for your family, for whoever came important into your life?
That's a great question. So my addiction journey started when I was 8, and it developed and came to a total head where the life shift happened at 25.
Okay.
Right. So speaking in a psychological scientific setting, I spent all of my conscious developmental years with multiple addictions. right? So
8 years old. That's wow.
8 years old is when I was introduced. And for me, it was pornography was the
Okay.
first addiction that I had. And then I only had kind of the pornography addiction up until I was about 14 or 15. But that at that age is when I got addicted to drugs and alcohol and smoking and vaping, partying, and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. It got worse when my sister passed away. I was 18 at the time; she was 16. As she completed suicide, and then instead of having like party drugs and fun times, it turned into a lifestyle. I could not have, couldn't not have my alcohol and my drugs because that's how I got through each day.
Yeah.
So I think it came to a serious head where I realized I actually had a problem where I needed to change and it wasn't serving me anymore. Was around the time my 2-year-old daughter, she's two now, three now actually. She was newborn. Her name is Willow. And I remember looking at Willow and holding her one day and just having this thought that, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible human being. I would never want my daughter to marry a dirtbag like me. Now, at the time, where I was about 25 years old, I had already walked away from drugs, alcohol, and vaping and smoking and partying and all that stuff, right? So I've been sober from that for about 5 years, about 4 or 5 years. I couldn't shake my pornography addiction though. It just had me, it was my vice. It's something I had known my entire life essentially.
Mhm.
And I remember the lying and the manipulation, and it was stuff that I just justified because I did. I'm not saying it was healthy. It's just what happens when you're an addict. And yeah, it really was that moment with my little daughter, just a newborn, where I just realized I was total piece of crap.
Wow, Chase, that's so powerful. Thank you for your vulnerability, and I mean, congratulations for being on this other side now. How hard was that first step? Because obviously, becoming aware is, of course, 50% of the battle, but then it's still not easy from there on.
It's kind of cool. So I have two stories where I stepped away from battles, right? That time when I was 2021, and I also have the time when I was 25, right? After the big realization where I realized my heart wasn't good. Do you have a preference on which one you'd like me to talk about?
Let's start with the first one, right? Let's go with the one of 2021.
Yeah. Okay. So 2021 comes around. I am trying to constantly get tattooed, right? That was my whole goal, to get covered in tattoos. I was doing nothing but drugs. I was working dead end jobs. My credit cards and line of credits were maxed out. I had no money in my bank account. I couldn't hold down a girlfriend because, quite frankly, they were awful. Or no, they weren't awful. I apologize. I was. And I couldn't do anything like that. I was engaged for a time. The girl I was engaged to, though, she was pretty abusive mentally and sometimes physically. So that didn't work out. And life was just spiraling so hard. And I didn't know how to do any better. I was never taught, right? I grew up religiously, so I had those religious settings, and I was bullied so bad within my religious upbringing that I didn't think that church, the church that I now belong to, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I didn't think it was the true church, because in my 18-year-old or my 14 to 18-year-old thought process, how could a church that fosters so much judgment and hate by other kids my age be the true church, be the church that I fully believe in? So I used that justification to walk away from it. I never saw it as a hospital for the sick. I just saw it as a place of judgment and ridicule. So I get to this point, I'm 20 years old, and at the time I was vaping like crazy, high point nicotine style stuff. I hadn't smoked weed in a while, but I wanted to, and I was drinking Everclear. Now, I don't know if Everclear is pretty prominent outside of the United States, but just imagine the stuff that makes you go blind.
Yeah.
Right? It's that kind of stuff. It's not healthy. It's probably a better cleaner than it is a beverage. And I remember waking up one morning at my buddy's house, and I was cuddling with a bunch of guys. I was being spooned and I was spooning. And I didn't really, I know it kind of sounds funny when you think about it. I barely knew the guys. And I remember having a thought around that time of, this sucks. This, I don't ever want to have to experience any of this again. The hangovers, the cuddling with guys I barely knew. No, I'm a heterosexual, so I don't swing that way. No judgment if you do. A guy actually told me once, "No judgment, just love." So it's Constantine's quote if you didn't know that. But so yeah, it wasn't my style. And I just thought, I was like, you know what? Time for God again. I'm done. And I went and met with my bishop, my ecclesiastical leader, essentially. And I had this 4 hour confessional with him where I sat down and everything from the time I was 8 up until I was 20, I told him everything. All of the times I had like used women for sex, all the times I had done drugs, all the times I drank, all the times I was smoking and lying and stealing and cheating and manipulating, everything. I told him everything. I told him all about my mental health battles and all of my suicidal ideation and my attempts and everything. I just gave it to him all, and I gave it to God, and I just said, I'm done. I need to be done. I have nothing else. Right? It's I have to do this or I have to die. There's nothing else. And I remember getting a blessing from him, and he just blessed that I'd be okay. And I remember going
Mm.
home, and because I still lived at my parents' house at the time, and all I had on me was my e-cig at that point, right? All because everything I'd done outside of my home, because my parents weren't cool with that kind of stuff in their home. And I remember throwing my e-cig away in their trash, and I walked away from that entire life cold turkey. Cold turkey meaning I never picked it back up again, never used nicotine patches, I never relapsed. I just walked away from it all, totally turned my back to it, and I was very blessed to walk away from it all cold turkey, and I never had a single withdrawal from all of the things I walked away from. It was by divine design a huge blessing. The only thing I couldn't shake was my pornography addiction, right? It got a lot better than what it was. However, it still had me. And so we get to this point, right? 5 years later, I'm married, 2 kids, and I have I have that realization with my daughter where I realized that, I'm a piece of crap. And I would never want her to marry a man as awful as me, who lied and manipulated, who would coerce his wife, who would lie about finances, and just all of these terrible things that I was doing that were so destructive and unhealthy. And I remember having another relapse after that, and then saying, okay, I need help. I need to talk to my wife about this. I need to let her know what was going on. So we were at her parents' house, and I take her on a walk, and we go and we sit down on a park bench. It's late at night. It's really cold. It was like February or March in Utah,
Yeah.
which it was probably like 30 something degrees or 40 something degrees. It was miserable. And I'm sitting on the stone bench, and I'm just like telling her, I am a terrible person. I messed up. I need help. And my wife in stride was like, yeah, you do. I love you and you need help. Right? She, saving grace, she was so good to me. And so I joined this foundations group with a local therapeutic practice where I live. And the foundations group was a 6 week course where they taught all about addiction recovery and all that kind of stuff. And I remember going there once a week for, I think it was 2 or 3 hours. And I just sat there and thought, I know all this stuff, right? I've been in and out of 12-step programs. Lingo, my parents chastised me. Like, I knew it all. So I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to be here. And part of me was doing it for my wife as well, right? Doing it so she would be okay with me because I struggled with codependency as well for quite some time. And I remember finishing up with that course, and there would even be times that I'd leave early to go work because, work paid the bills. So that was my excuse, and joined a men's group. It was probably 2 or 3 months into the men's group, going there weekly for an hour and a half each week, before I finally was like, okay, I actually like this. I'm doing this for myself. And that's where I think that's where the big turn was, is after about 2.5 months of doing it for my wife, I realized that I actually enjoyed it too. And so then I got really deep into my recovery work, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. Wow, Chase. Again, thank you so much for your vulnerability and authenticity there. And there's so many things to unpack, but I wanna kind of go from the end to the beginning there, perhaps.
Let's do
When
it.
you just said you started it because you wanted to do it for her, and then in the process realized that it was actually for you, and that's what kept you going. And that's what I found on my journey and in the journey of the many beautiful souls I get to work with. If it's for someone else and you don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, it's rarely going to stick. And in your case, it stuck because you made it about you becoming a better version of yourself, which is so amazing to see, brother. So I'm proud of you. Congratulations. And of course, can't wait to see where the journey takes you.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, wow. Now, with particularly with a situation when you share with your wife, right? It's like, hey, I'm going through this, and she's like, yeah, you do. Let's do something about it. I mean, many people don't get that luxury. Twofold. One, they may not get the courage or the power to actually admit that something is wrong and ask for it, and then if they do, they might not get the support they need. So I'm curious to see if you've had any experience with that, where maybe the first part where you were afraid to actually speak up and say, hey, you know what, I have an issue, or even admit, because you talked about denial a bit. But I'm curious if that's been, for example, what kept you between 20 and 25 to actually do it sooner. Was it, you think, more of a denial or more of a fear of not being able to speak up, being taken seriously, all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I think about it, it was a lot of shame, right? Because I had my ecclesiastical leader who tried to support me, my parents tried to support me, my wife tried to support me. And by in the story I told myself, which is not right, it's not true now, but it was back then, right? Because I believed it. But the belief was that if I relapsed, I was a terrible person.
You're
Right.
weak.
I was weak. I was pathetic. I was a snake. I was a pig. Whatever that term is. I just believed that I was bad, and I was incredibly codependent, meaning that I got my worth from other people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I told other people, "Hey, I relapsed. Hey, I messed up. Hey, I slipped. Hey, I acted out," whatever term you use in therapy, right, in your own therapeutic life, if I went to my wife or my ecclesiastical leader and said, "Hey, I acted out. I relapsed," the fear was essentially the little like, "You did? Really? Again?"
Yeah.
Right, that. And that little thought right there crushed me to the point where I said, "You know what? I'm just not going to disclose." And then I learned this pattern that if I could just deal with the gunk that I felt in my chest, right? The shame, the burning, the feeling that I needed to tell somebody, right? Because of my commitments that I would. But if I could just deal with it for like 2 or 3 days, it would go away. And I'd be able to move on and I'd be forgiven. Right? Was kind of my thoughts that so that was the denial I told myself for a long time. And it got to this point where that crap wouldn't go away unless I told somebody about it. Right? The guilt, the shame, whatever that burning in my chest was. And it wasn't like one of the good burning where someone's like, I feel this burning in my chest and I've got to go save the world. It was like, there's this burning in my chest that I'm just a terrible person. And the minute I can get a confirmation that I'm okay, it goes away. And yeah, so it really was just shame that kept me from talking to people because I didn't want to be a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really interesting is if you look at things like shame in this case and other things that we talked about, right? If you start to break it down, which you have, it all comes down to some form of fear. For example, the story you gave at the beginning, right? That's a fear of not being good enough.
Right.
The shame is a fear of being put down, perhaps rejected, right? Fear of failure because, oh, then if you admit, then you failed again.
Yeah, exactly. It was that I didn't want that because I didn't have a good enough belief in myself. I didn't love myself enough to know that even if I slipped up, fun fact, slipping up is a human experience, right? So learning to just give myself some grace and love myself and believe that I am a worthy person, that I'm a great man who's a work in progress, regardless of some of the choices I might make in the hard parts of my life, right? I just believed that I wasn't enough.
Yeah, brother. No, hear you, Nathan. That's a big part of my continuous journey here, right? Because as we go through all these steps, we keep unpacking, and all of a sudden you realize there's more layers, and almost always there's a fear associated with it. And if we get curious, if we ask the right questions, you find out those fears, and they break down like illusions because most of them are not real, and
Mhm.
that's it. And then you move on. I'm curious because I know in us talking before, and from your profile as well, you have a passion for holistic healing, and especially through what you do right now with your business, right, which is the red light therapy, which I'll be honest, I haven't had much exposure to it. So I'd be curious if you could tell us a bit more about red light therapy and why red light therapy, and for anyone listening, why it might benefit them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a huge believer, like you said, in holistic healing. in a lot of different ways, right? So like I believe cold plunging, meditating, journaling, a lot of these things, proper diets and nutrition are also huge. And I can pretty much talk about a lot of stuff. So it's your choice on the direction we go here. But red light therapy is really cool for a few reasons. Now, what we do is a little more niche specific. At my company, the Wellness Center, what we do is we pulse red light therapy. Now, red light therapy is exposure to light in the red spectrum. So if you look straight up, if you're listening, look straight up and you can see your lights in your ceiling if you're inside, right? Now, those lights are just lights in the spectrum of light, right? They're a specific wavelength. I just use the red wavelength and the near infrared as well. And what exposing people to red light therapy does is it improves their circulation, decreases their inflammation, gives you more energy, and promotes your body's natural ability to heal through a lot of different chemical and scientific reactions when your cells are exposed to the red light. Now, the pulsing, this is the cool part. This is where the holistic mental health comes in. Now, red light pulsed at specific frequencies can command the body to function differently depending on the frequency. So, for example, red light pulsed at 20 hertz has been proven to produce dopamine naturally in the brain, right? Red light therapy at 40 hertz has been proven to remove amyloid plaque. It's that gray matter that builds up on your brain that causes Alzheimer's disease. There are specific frequencies that can get your brain into a state of theta, right, which allows you to think differently.
Oh, yeah.
So what we do is we just find scientific research about red light therapy and we create protocols to do that kind of stuff. Our big niches are mental health and concussion repair. So the reason we got, my mom and I, because she's my business partner, the reason we got into this is because I had a little sister who completed suicide, again, back when she was 16. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that earlier in the podcast. Sometimes I've got the memory of a goldfish, so you'll have to forgive me. But she had a really serious concussion, and that's what's kind of led her down the spiral to suicide. So my mom, bless her heart, said, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this doesn't happen to other families, right? No one should have to experience the pain of burying a child. It's terrible. No one should have to experience the pain of burying a sibling before the time is right, right? Like, again, 80 or 90 years old, cool, it's their time to die, right? They've lived a good long life. 16, I was 18, it's way too young. And so my mom spent the last 10 years trying to find things that would get rid of the symptoms of a concussion. And she, after 10 years of searching, found red light and asked me to come work with her as her business partner. And, went forward with it hands down without ever looking back. And yeah, that's what we do. We take the symptoms of a concussion, which can sometimes present as anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, and it can get rid of those entirely.
Wow. And how does this look like? Because I know that there's a wellness center I go to here when I give my massages and chiropractic services, and they just installed a sauna, and they have a red light therapy as part of the sauna, which is I actually tried for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I felt it was pretty cool, these powerful red lights. I didn't necessarily know all the benefits, so thank you for sharing that. But is it something similar where perhaps you have a helmet that goes on, or is there different things that people can do with red light therapy?
Yeah, so there is a lot out there that you can buy, right? There are panels you can buy, there are masks you can buy, there are wraps you can buy, there are like wands, like lasers that you can buy. If you have a lot of money, you can invest in like a full body pod, which kind of looks like a tanning bed. There's a lot you can do there. My only suggestion for you is that if you're going to do that, avoid Amazon, right? Because there is a lot of made in China style red lights that have actually scientifically been proven to be ineffective, to actually not do anything. So what you want to look for is a medical grade red light therapy device. Or if you want, you can look up, there's a fancy term called photobiomodulation. Photo meaning light, bio means the biology, and modulation meaning to calibrate. So photobiomodulation. If you look up for a photobiomodulation device, there's a good chance you're going to find something that'll actually be effective.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you talked a bit about the research and whatnot. What are some of the clients that come your way seeing from this therapy? Like, is it something that they can see benefits almost with one session, or is it something that takes a lot longer in your experience?
Great question. You're a unicorn if you notice something after your first experience, right? Some people do. Everyone's a little bit different. However, yeah, it's about 6 sessions is honestly the average. Now, a session is about 20 minutes. We recommend you do them every other day for the course of 2 weeks to a month, so 6 to 12 sessions. But most people like Constantine, so if you go and you do that, the infrared sauna, and you do that 3 times a week, you're probably going to notice an increase in your sleep, right? You're going to be sleeping better. You're going to be thinking clearer. You're going to have more energy throughout your day.
Mm.
If you have any aches and pains in like your limbs or your joints, those will probably start decreasing. Yeah, there's a lot that you can notice.
Yeah, I mean that's we can talk about the cold plunge as well. We haven't really talked about it on the show. It's one of the things I've done my own research into this, right? Like the power of saunas, hot tubs, and then with the cold plunge, and then how all the benefits. Red light therapy is still fairly new in my area, but it's pretty cool to see that all this research now is catching up to some of the things that some people may have known but couldn't really put into like, hey, this is why this works, and now they're catching up and they're showing us, hey, all these amazing things
Yeah.
are happening. That's awesome.
Evolving science is so cool, dude. I love it. And I love that there's more science coming out about cold plunges and red light and like your diet, like your gut brain biome, right?
Yes.
Like that stuff is coming out like crazy right now. So I love that. I'm a firm believer that God or whatever higher power you believe in, when he created this earth, he put everything on the earth that you needed naturally to deal with any issues you have.
Yes.
And so it's all about the self awareness and asking those questions of what do I actually need here, right? Instead of saying, I need another medication, maybe there's a deficiency in your intake, in your diet, right? Maybe you have some minerals that you're lacking on that are causing those things, right? Like I just learned from a supplement expert that the reason some people get arthritis, not saying all, but sometimes people who get arthritis, it's because there's a huge calcium deficiency in their body. And it's because the minerals that they're intaking aren't giving them enough absorbable calcium, that their bones are giving the calcium to the rest of the body, depleting the calcium in the bones, therefore causing the arthritis.
Yeah, that's a lot of the coming out, Chase, right? We have some people on the show that specialize in sleep, people that specialize in autoimmune diseases, and big thing with vitamin D deficiencies that happen across the globe. And there's so much stuff coming out right now. It's just that's actually one of the challenges that I'm sure you are facing and I'm facing and most people are facing is there's actually a thing of too much information and where you get your information from, right? And
Right.
I'm seeing that in my life, and I saw it all throughout my life. And now this one doctor I had on the show, Dr. David Billstrom, our
Mm-hmm.
audience is familiar because he's been on the show a couple of times. I was asking this question. I'm like, why do not more doctors and health practitioners know about the stuff that he's talking about, which is vitamin D deficiencies and how that can solve a lot of issues? And really, what he shared was staggering to me was the idea that medical research and information doubles every I don't know, it was something like 3 days or less now. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much information that it's impossible for anyone to keep up with it. Perhaps the new AI technology or the newer AI technology that we have right now, it can help with that, right? So you can start to process the information because there's so much out there. A, you don't know what to believe in, and B, you may not even find the stuff you need because there's so much, good or bad.
Yeah, it's totally true, and it's all about where you look, honestly. So if you guys are listening to this and you need good health advice, just keep coming back to the Unleash Thyself podcast, right?
Very good, Chase. Yeah, I mean, at the end, at the same time, like I love what you just said, and I appreciate it, Chase, 100%. And what I always say for myself and for everyone listening, and in my life to family and friends, is like, if it makes sense to you, then do a bit more research, see if it's really plausible, and then do something with it. If it doesn't make sense, toss it out. That's it, right? Like at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, I think maybe on your show or in other areas we talked about this. There's a lot of power in believing in our own ability to discern, right? And
Right.
I feel like through how we grew up in society and whatnot, we have been made to look externally for all the answers. And in this case, of course, it's health. You got to look externally. But then you also have to use your power of discernment to decide, okay, maybe I want to try red light therapy. Chase has talked nicely about it. I did some research. It looks good. Let me try it. And then you be the judge of it. Or cold plunging if you want to take something more simple, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
any of the other things that won't pose a risk to you right away if you try it and see if it works for you.
Yeah, I love that you talked about like trusting your instinct. Not the same word, but that's what you talked about, right?
Pretty
I
much.
heard what was that?
Yeah, pretty much. Go ahead. Go
Yeah, you
ahead.
got to trust your instinct. I heard once, and I don't know if this is totally true or not, but I resonate with it, that humans are the only animal on this entire planet that can act contrary to their instinct, right? Everything else follows their instinct. And I personally believe that we were created in God's image, right? And so that we have a part of God in us, which means we have a divine instinct. So who are you to deny your own instinct? Trust it, honor it, respect it, follow through with it. I've yet to have an opportunity where I followed my instinct that I didn't learn, that I didn't either win or learn from it in a major way.
Oh yeah.
So honor your instinct if you're listening. Honor it.
I love that we got to that conversation, Chase, because that's such a powerful message, and it's one that I could have used, 5, 10 years ago for sure. Because
Right. Right. Amen to that.
and the more you tap into it, there's a lot of research coming out there. Right, we talked about the gut biome and the gut brain barrier and like how that connects all of it, and intuition is a big part of it as well. And there's a lot of science now proving why intuition is even a thing and how it could work from a chemical and biology level, not just spiritual level, right? But absolutely, there's a lot of power in that, and I've I've been able to greatly benefit from tapping more into it. Not always listening, but when you listen, like you said, you either win or you win, because learning is just winning a different way.
Exactly. Amen to that, bro.
Awesome, Chase. So let's tell people where they can find you, and if you have any last thoughts, we can go to that, and then we'll call it a show.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much, Constantine, for having me on and providing like a safe space for me to share my story with your people. So, guys, love on Constantine as well. Give him all the credit in the world. I know he has his Calm Success Life that he has coming up. Please make sure to go to that and register for that as well, guys. It's only $7. So imagine everything we talked about in greater detail. Imagine getting that for $7, right? $7. It's a gallon of gas in America, right? It's maybe a third of a date night with your wife. You can afford $7. So just $7. Go sign up. Crush some cans if you need to. But you guys can find me personally if you want to know more about what I do on the day-to-day basis. So I, again, have my red light therapy practice my wellness center. You can go to www.thewellnesscenter.life. One more time, www.thewellnesscenter.life. Now, if you do want to come and check out my podcast, I run the Wellness Center podcast, which focuses on destigmatizing mental health. I do that through asking all of my guests, which Constantine was one. So if nothing else, you got to come at least listen to his story. I ask every single one of my guests the same 5 questions, and it's all about bringing people through a journey, right? From understanding that stuff is okay as a child, that hard trials and pivotal journeys are okay, that coping skills develop over time, that there is hope, and then I lead people off with that. So would love for you guys to come check it out. Again, to find it, go to thewellnesscenter.life and just click on the podcast tab on the menu tab. It's right up there on the top. You can find me on YouTube with the Wellness Center channel. I don't know if you can see it, but it has my little power flower as as the profile picture. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And if you ever want, great place to find me.
Awesome, great stuff, Chase. Thank you so much, brother, and thank you for the audience for listening to us. And have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you, Chase.
Thank you, Constantine.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of personal transformation. Your presence and engagement are at the heart of what we do, and I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and thirst for knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment. Please consider showing your support by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment, or writing a review. Your engagement not only fuels our mission, but also helps others discover these insights. For more daily guidance on personal transformation across the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms, be sure to visit our website at unleashthyself.com. You can also find us on Instagram at unleashthyselftoday, TikTok and YouTube at unleashthyself, and there we post daily content designed to inspire and empower you on your journey. If you have any specific thoughts, questions, or feedback, I truly value your input. I would love to hear from you. Together, we're building a community united in authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you for being a part of this movement. Until next time, continue to embrace your true self and live a life on purpose, with purpose. See you in the next episode.